Right now, somewhere in the world, the very first drug designed to stop aging is being tested in a laboratory, and you don't even know it. But here's the truly unsettling part. You may be on the verge of realizing that you wouldn't want immortality at all. Because what you're about to see in this video isn't just science. It challenges everything we think we know about what it means to be human. And if you don't watch until the end, you'll miss one of the greatest turning points in history. Let's begin. Have you ever thought about this? Even as you're listening to me right now, billions of cells in your body are quietly dying, and new ones are taking their place. But why doesn't this cycle go on forever? Scientists chasing this very question have made discoveries over the past decade that have pushed immortality from the realm of science fiction straight into the agendas of serious biotech labs. But hold on, this topic is far more complex and honestly, a bit unsettling. Because what we mean by immortality isn't even clear. Is it living forever, stopping aging, or maybe continuing to exist as a conscious mind in a digital copy? This uncertainty is exactly where the story begins, and right now, science is exploring all three paths at once. The first, and perhaps the closest to reality, is slowing down or even reversing cellular aging. As you probably know, our cells have protective caps called telomeres. These structures cover the ends of our DNA, and with every cell division, they get shorter. Eventually, the cell can no longer renew itself. David Sinclair and his team at Harvard have managed to reverse aging in mice by boosting levels of a molecule called NAD+. The mice literally rejuvenated. Their fur regained its shine, their energy surged, and their organs began to regenerate. But does this work in humans? Clinical trials are ongoing, and some wealthy Silicon Valley entrepreneurs are already experimenting with these kinds of treatments on themselves. Here's the intriguing part. Slowing aging is one thing, but becoming immortal is something else entirely. Even if we could stop aging, accidents, diseases, and unforeseen events would still exist. Biological immortality, in other words, isn't eternal life. It's just slowing down or halting the aging clock. This is where the second path comes in, and it's far more radical: gene editing. Thanks to CRISPR technology, we can now edit DNA almost like a Word document, deleting mistakes and typing in corrections. Scientists like George Church are even trying to bring woolly mammoths back using this technology. Now imagine, if we could completely deactivate the genes that trigger aging, or go even further and optimize the human genome as if giving it an upgrade, designing a body that's stronger, more resilient, and disease-resistant. This would no longer be evolution. It would be us designing our own species. But here's the critical problem that most people don't even notice. No matter how advanced gene editing becomes, the brain remains a major hurdle. Our brains are made up of roughly 100 billion neurons, and most of these neurons do not regenerate. We live with most of the neurons we're born with. So, no matter how much you renew your body or edit your genes, if the brain can't overcome aging and degeneration, eventually you start losing who you are, what you love, and why you even exist. Alzheimer's, dementia, and neurodegenerative diseases enter the picture right here. And this is the greatest puzzle science faces. How do you protect the brain, repair it, renew it? Some scientists are experimenting with stem cell therapy, injecting new neurons into the brain. Others are searching for ways to repair damaged cells by sending in nanobots. But the strangest part is this. Maybe the most radical solution is to abandon the brain altogether. This is where the third path begins, and it truly sounds like dystopian science fiction, but it's real. Mind uploading, or digital immortality. Uploading your thoughts, your consciousness, your memories, your personality into a computer. Elon Musk's Neuralink project is essentially built around this vision, implanting microchips in the brain to read, record, and eventually transfer the electrical signals of neurons onto a digital platform. Futurists like Ray Kurzweil claim we could achieve this by the year 2045. Kurzweil himself reportedly swallows hundreds of vitamin pills every day, hoping to stay alive until then. But here's the real question. Is that actually you? Let's say your consciousness is copied into a computer. That digital version thinks like you, feels like you, carries your memories, but you're still standing there in your biological body. So who is real? Which consciousness is truly you? Philosophers call this the problem of personal identity, and honestly, there's no satisfying answer. Some argue that consciousness requires continuity, that instead of copying, there must be a gradual transfer, like the ship of Theseus paradox. If you replace every part of a ship piece by piece, is it still the same ship? Other theories claim that consciousness itself is an illusion, and that what really matters is information and pattern. If you are already a data pattern, then no matter where that data is stored, it's still you. But this debate leads somewhere even deeper, because in chasing immortality, we may be realizing that we don't truly understand what death is. Is death merely a biological ending, or is it the source of meaning, value, and motivation? Martin Heidegger argued that death is what makes human existence authentic. He said that being is thrown into time. In other words, knowing that your time is limited makes you responsible for your choices. So what happens if time is infinite? If tomorrow always exists, what meaning does today retain? There's no cost to postponement. Love loses its urgency. The value of time collapses to zero. Perhaps immortality is actually the greatest curse. The myth of Tithonus in Greek mythology tells exactly this story. The goddess Eos asks Zeus to grant her lover Tithonus immortality, but forgets to ask for eternal youth. Tithonus keeps aging, but never dies. Eventually, he shrinks into a tiny cicada, doing nothing but endlessly groaning. Modern science may be making the same mistake. We want immortality, but we haven't clearly defined what a high-quality, meaningful, valuable life truly is. Now let's move into something more technical, because none of this is just theory. These are real projects, funded with real money in real laboratories. For example, a company called Altos Labs was founded in 2021 and raised $3 billion in its first round of investment. Jeff Bezos is among its backers. The company's goal is to reverse aging through cellular reprogramming. They're building on the Nobel Prize-winning work of Shinya Yamanaka. Using 4 genes known as the Yamanaka factors, it's possible to force mature cells to behave like stem cells again, to literally rewind the cell in time. Now imagine if you could do this for every cell in your body. In theory, you could renew all your organs and tissues. But here's a very dangerous boundary. If you push cells too far back, the risk of cancer skyrockets because the control mechanisms shut down. It's a delicate balance, how much rejuvenation and how much control. That's Altos Labs' biggest challenge. On the other hand, there's a company called Calico, founded by Google, which is trying to understand the fundamental mechanisms of aging. They study naked mole rats because these tiny creatures can live up to 30 years and show almost no signs of aging. They're also incredibly resistant to cancer. The secret lies in their intercellular communication and cellular repair. If we could apply this mechanism to humans, we might be able to double, triple, or even quintuple the human lifespan. But now, let's get to the real question. Let's say we succeed. Let's say that by 2050, we've stopped aging, optimized the body with gene therapy, and maybe even transferred consciousness into a digital format. Then what? What would be the social, economic, and psychological consequences? Think about it. The retirement system would collapse because no one would retire. Social security funds would run dry. Generational turnover would vanish. New ideas, new leaders wouldn't emerge because the old ones would still be around. Power and wealth would concentrate, creating an immortal oligarchy. The world is already overpopulated. What happens if no one dies? Would births be banned? Would someone have to die for each new baby? Or would we expand into space, colonize Mars and the Moon, endlessly expanding? Perhaps immortality would only be a privilege for the ultra-rich, a class divide between mortals and immortals. As Timothy Leary said, immortality could become the ultimate status symbol. But is that ethical? Should only the wealthy live forever? Or is this a human right? Should everyone have access? WHO might call it a public health issue. But where would the funding come from? Would governments control it, or the private sector? Imagine a company possessing an immortality treatment. Its power would reach godlike levels. It would decide who lives and who dies. These aren't just speculative questions, they're real debates happening right now in bioethics boards. But perhaps the most fascinating question is, do we really want to be immortal? I mean, honestly, if you pause and think, does eternal life actually appeal to you? Psychological research offers a surprising answer. People generally want to postpone death, but they don't actually want immortality. Paradoxical, but true. Maybe because the meaning of life comes from its finiteness. Every moment matters because it cannot be repeated. Love is intense because of the fear of loss. Achievement tastes sweet because of uncertainty. Would immortality destroy all of that? This is where Nietzsche's concept of the eternal recurrence comes in. If you knew your life would repeat endlessly, would you make the same choices, do the same things? Nietzsche presented it as a thought experiment, but if immortality becomes reality, that thought experiment becomes real. Endless repetition, infinite cycles. Perhaps, after a while, existential fatigue would set in, a weariness of living. In fact, in some ancient mythologies, immortal beings are always melancholic and sorrowful because nothing is new and they have seen everything. Now let's move to a technically thrilling point. In the past few years, artificial intelligence and biotechnology have begun to merge, and this convergence has accelerated immortality research at an incredible pace. AI systems like AlphaFold have solved protein folding. This means designing new drugs and treatments now takes months instead of years. Machine learning allows us to simulate millions of molecules and identify which ones slow down aging processes. AI is even starting to propose gene editing strategies, optimizing CRISPR and calculating the precise order in which genes should be edited. But here's the most fascinating part. Perhaps the path to immortality isn't biological at all, it's digital. Maybe the next generation of humans will be hybrid beings, part biological, part digital. Nanobots in your body will constantly perform repairs. Your brain will be connected to the cloud, your memories automatically backed up and restored if damaged. You'd no longer be fully human, nor fully machine. You'd be something called transhuman. The transhumanism movement advocates exactly this, accelerating human evolution through technology, overcoming biological limitations, transitioning from Homo sapiens to Homo Deus, as Yuval Noah Harari describes in his books. But here lies a philosophical chasm. If you are now 50% machine and 50% human, are you still you? What does it mean to be human? Is consciousness exclusive to carbon, or could silicon have it too? Some philosophers argue that consciousness is substrate independent. It doesn't matter what material it's made of. What matters is the information processing structure. If that's true, then a digital consciousness could be indistinguishable from, or even superior to, a biological one. But others argue that consciousness is inseparable from physical, embodied experience. Without a body, there are no sensations, emotions, or experiences, so there is no consciousness. This debate ties into what's known as the hard problem of consciousness. David Chalmers asked, why does the firing of electrical signals produce experience? Why isn't it just darkness? Why do we feel something? Without answering this, even if immortality becomes possible, it might be meaningless, because the immortal entity may not truly be you, just a simulation. But maybe this distinction is artificial. Perhaps we're already living in a simulation. The simulation hypothesis has gained serious attention in recent years. Oxford philosopher Nick Bostrom mathematically argued that if creating simulations is possible in the future, it's statistically far more likely that we're already in a simulation, because there could be one real universe and countless simulated ones. If that's the case, then immortality is already possible. As long as the simulation continues running, you exist forever. Perhaps the simulators are even running you repeatedly in different scenarios. Infinite lives, infinite versions. At this point, science and philosophy become so intertwined that the line disappears. The question of immortality ceases to be purely technical. It becomes existential. Who are we? What do we want to be? Is death truly an end or a transition? Perhaps immortality already exists, but in a different form. Your ideas, your works, your children, your impact, these are all a kind of immortality. As Woody Allen said, "I don't want to be immortal through my work. I want to be immortal by not dying." But maybe this distinction is artificial. Cultural immortality might be more valuable than biological immortality. Shakespeare died physically, yet his thoughts have lived for centuries. Has Einstein really died? Every time E equals mc squared is written, he is reborn. But is that enough? Or does our ego refuse to accept it? The I wants to cling to something, to persist. What if immortality is actually liberation from this self? Perhaps the deepest motivation behind immortality research is this ego, the drive to cling to existence. But in Eastern philosophies like Buddhism, the ego is already considered an illusion. The self does not truly exist. There's only a continuous flow of ever-changing experiences. Pursuing immortality reinforces this illusion. True peace comes from letting go of the ego, surrendering to the flow. So who is right? East or West? Science or philosophy? Perhaps both are, but they answer different questions. Science answers how. Philosophy asks why and for what. Is immortality possible? Is a scientific question. Should we be immortal? Is philosophical. And perhaps the real problem is trying to solve the first without answering the second. Technology always moves faster than ethics. We do things because we can, not because we should. The atomic bomb was created this way. Social media algorithms spread this way. Immortality technology may develop in the same manner. By the time we notice, it could be too late. Someone will press a button and there will be no turning back. Then society will have to decide, accept it or reject it. But who decides? Governments, scientists, companies, the public, or only the first ones to reach it? Looking at history, major technological leaps have always been unevenly distributed. The Industrial Revolution enriched some countries while turning others into colonies. The internet empowered some while putting others under surveillance. Immortality technology could create the biggest divide yet: immortals and mortals. And once that chasm opens, it's impossible to close. Immortals would never give up their power. With infinite time and limitless accumulation, they would eventually control everything. Maybe that's why the dystopia in the Matrix movies feels so chillingly plausible. An immortal AI, served by an immortal elite, and everyone else just a source of energy. But perhaps that's too pessimistic a view. Maybe immortality could be democratized, just like smartphones were. When the iPhone launched in 2007, it was a toy only for the wealthy. Now billions carry supercomputers in their pockets. Perhaps immortality treatment could follow the same path. First expensive, then affordable, until eventually everyone has access. Then a truly new era would begin. The post-mortem era, a time without death. What would life be like in that era? You wake up in the morning without fear of death. Every day is a new opportunity because there are endless days ahead. Risks are easier to take because the cost of failure is low. Long-term plans are actually long-term because the long-term truly exists. Traveling to the stars becomes possible because a journey of 100 years is no longer a problem. You sleep, you wake, and find yourself in a completely different solar system. These are all entertaining and thought-provoking ideas, but maybe the real question we should be asking isn't whether we want to be immortal, it's whether we want to live meaningfully. Because let's be honest, we already fail to fully live the 70 or 80 years we're given. We spend half of it asleep, most of the rest drifting by, trapped in routines, and then one day you look up and realize 10 years are gone. What did you do? Where did that time go? Maybe the real problem isn't time at all, it's awareness. Immortality wouldn't give us more time, it would just give us more chances to forget. Think about it. What did you eat for lunch today? Do you remember? What were you doing at 7 o'clock 3 days ago? Most of you don't. Now imagine living for 1,000 years. It would be the same blur, just stretched out longer. Perhaps this is exactly what death teaches us, the value of each moment, its irreversibility. That ordinary dinner with someone you love might be the last one, and that awareness pulls you into the moment, makes you feel it more deeply. Immortality kills that urgency, and without urgency, life becomes little more than drifting. Maybe the deepest truth is this: while chasing immortality, the time we lose is the very moment we're meant to live, the present. Science may achieve every miracle imaginable, editing our genes, uploading our minds, placing us inside simulations. But none of it will answer the one question that truly matters. Why am I here right now? And what am I going to do with it? Because perhaps the meaning of life isn't to last forever, but to truly touch, feel, connect, and leave a mark, even in a short time. And one final thought. Maybe the greatest form of immortality is continuing to live on in the lives of others, in their memories, their stories, what you taught them, and the love you gave. That kind of immortality requires no technology and no money. It asks only one thing: to truly be here while you are here. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for upcoming videos, each one designed to expand your mind, deepen your awareness, and take you one step further on your journey of consciousness.